So then we create this bias approach, in essence. And by the way, I've known marriages that break up over credit cards. Number one reason marriages fail is communication. It's not sex, it's not money, it's communication. People aren't talking. You got to talk, and you got to have the uncomfortable conversations with your spouse. That's how you fix your marriage. You literally need to tell each other what you like and what you don't like. Nobody's mind readers. But number one thing is communication. Number two is money, and I never understood that. I just don't care about money that much, I don't believe. But a lot of people, their relationships end over money. And typically it's because one person in that relationship cannot stop spending. And I counseled a couple one time, and dude gets bank statement, missing about 10 grand, and calls the bank, what's going on with this? And they're like, no, these are all valid transactions. Wife had clothes in her closet that she has never worn and couldn't wear because she couldn't let him see that she bought the stuff. And I mean $500 pair of shoes, $1,000 dress that she could never wear because she can't let him see that she bought it, but she went and bought it. And that marriage was over. And he said, I don't want to divorce her because I don't love her or because she spent the money. It's because she kept this from me. And he couldn't get over that. And they actually ended up working that marriage out, but she just couldn't stop spending. She just couldn't stop. And my point is that that's supposed to be better than this? No. So going back to our bias approach. So here's what we've been told over the years, what I was told in the church over the years. Anyone who drinks, cheats, beats, wrecks, and strips. That anyone who goes out and has a drink, they end up looking like that at the end of the night. That's all it's good for. That's what happens. So we go out one night with my sister and my brother-in-law, they were just dating at the time. And we're eating dinner at Tampico. We always say Tampico's, but you know it's just Tampico. There's no S on it. Like the book of Revelation in the Bible, there's no S. It's not Revelations, it's just Revelation. But anyway, so we're at Tampico, and next to us is a doctor. I can't remember which one, he's retired. But he starts talking to us. And I mean, just a friendly conversation, and he's happy, and he got a big smile, and he's talking about the kids. And finally, his daughter leans over and says, he's had too many margaritas, we're sorry. And I said, no, it's fine. He's not bothering us at all. And he sat there, and he kept talking, and finally he said, I think I did have too many margaritas. They're sneaking up on me. He said, man, I feel really good. And anyway, they ended up getting up and leaving, and I thought, that man ain't going home and beating anybody. That man ain't trying to pee right here in the dining area. That man's just enjoying himself. He's just relaxed and smiling and talking very pleasantly. And you could tell he was buzzed. But they drove him home. You know, none of that crazy stuff that I always heard happens when people drink. My dad was an alcoholic. No, correction. He was a drunk because he said alcoholics go to meetings. And he said, I don't go to meetings. I'm not an alcoholic, I'm drunk. But we preferred him that way. When my dad was not drinking, he was not tolerable. He was mean, he was mad, and everything was wrong about. I mean, literally, Dad, what you watching on TV? You can't see what I got on the TV? Start drinking. Start telling jokes. Happy, loved everybody, wanted to laugh. We preferred him that way. It was the only way he was tolerable. He would start drinking in the morning most days and quit at night. Never saw my daddy belligerent. Never saw somebody having to carry him somewhere. Never saw him where he couldn't walk, couldn't move. Never saw him that way. Never urinated himself. He made a fool out of himself, but never in the way that a belligerent person does. Never saw him that way. All of which contradicts these thoughts and these ideas that we have about this stuff. The reality is not many people beat, strip, steal, urinate themselves. That's a rare thing. And people that do that got problems. And their problem isn't alcohol. Their problem is they may have an addictive personality. They may be an extremist. They may have some mental issues. They're self-medicating. There's a lot of stuff that convolutes and complicates this stuff than just, well, they drink a couple of beers and look at them acting like a fool. And that brings us to an interesting thought too. You know, a guy might could drink 2 beers and he's good, he's done. And I just tell you about me and my life and what I know about me. I drink 12 beers, I'm just getting started. That's just a start for me. That's Irish blood, I don't know. Other people drink 12 beers, they are done. They got to go to bed. I drink 12 beers and he's like, well, what else you got? I'm just telling you, that's me, knowing me my whole life, and so on and so forth. So does alcohol cheer the heart, or does it muddle the mind? We got both those verses in the Bible, by the way. We got a verse that says alcohol cheers the heart. It says, he that drinketh cheereth his heart. We got verses that say alcohol is an adder and muddles the mind. So which is it? Well, here's what I'm not going to go through every verse and every scenario. And sure as be day, somebody got a verse and they're going to call me up. They're going to send me a message. They're going to say, what about this verse? I know. The same way with Romans 10:10 and Romans 6:3, right? There's a verse. I understand that. But what I want to do is go through a series of verses. I don't know, I got over a dozen or so written down here. I'm going to display them on the screen. That's going to show you where alcohol is presented in a positive light in Scripture. Then we need to talk about culture and that sort of thing. I find it funny that David, if you know the story of David, David was married and he was the king of Israel. And David is on, the Bible says the rooftop, really he's on like the balcony of his mansion, right, of his palace. And he sees a woman who's naked, I'm guessing about 100 yards away or so, if that far, and she's bathing. Now, my understanding is that's probably not the first time that David saw that naked woman over there. So he says, who's that? And they say that's Uriah's wife. Uriah was one of the captains in David's army. So David knows who these people are. They've met, okay? So David says, I wouldn't mind seeing her. Now, listen, I don't know about you, but if I go in my backyard, Jarrett Longman got a house behind me that's 2 stories, and he can look right down in my backyard. You're not going to find my wife sunbathing where Jared and his son could watch her, because she knows that they could see. If this woman she knows people can see, is my point. So she's aware that David sees. So she's throwing a signal up to David like, hey. And David's like, well, hi. So he says, I'd like to see her. So they go get Bathsheba, and they bring Bathsheba to David. And guess what? They do what people do. And a little while later, she sends a letter to David, and she says, kind of pregnant here. And guess what? It ain't Uriah, because he's at battle. He's at war. He's one of the captains in the army. They're at war right now. So David gets this news and he's like, dude, this is so bad, because everybody knows that Bathsheba came by the house. And now Bathsheba was pregnant. Easy fix. David says, call Uriah, tell him I need to meet with him. He's one of my captains in the army, man. I need to meet with him. So he calls Uriah. Uriah comes in from the battlefield, goes to the palace, and David gets him drunk. Because David's thinking, you're going to get drunk, and you're going to go home to your wife, and husband and wife, and then everybody think Uriah's baby. Problem solved. So he gets Uriah drunk, and Uriah don't go home. And David tries this twice, and both times Uriah don't go home. He said, and David said, what are you doing? Why didn't you go home? He sleeps outside in the street. And David said, why didn't you go home? And he said, my Lord, I can't go home and enjoy my wife while my soldiers are giving their lives on the battlefield. He said, that's wrong. And David feels about that big at that point. But he don't want this to get out. So he has Uriah murdered. And then later on it comes out what's happened here, and that baby ends up dying, by the way. But in all of this, in Nathan the prophet coming in and confronting David and calling out David, he never got in trouble for getting somebody drunk. Just saying. It never came up as an issue. If it's that big a deal that we've made it, you think God would be like, and then you brought alcohol into the house. But it never comes up. And Uriah didn't go, ooh, hey, hold on here. Wait, God doesn't like this. Why? Part of their culture. That's what they did. And it was accepted. So let's hit some verses here. I'm just going to throw a bunch at you. They're random, but just want to make a point. Judges chapter 9, verse 12, 13. Then the tree said to the vine, you come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, should I cease my new wine, which cheers both God and men, and go to sway over trees? So this word, new wine here, is actually a Hebrew word, which means beer. So he's saying, should I cease from producing, beer, alcohol, that cheers who? God and men. Well, now, if this is bad, how could it be that it cheers God and man? Right? Does that make sense? It would say that God despises. Wouldn't it say that? If God hates it and despises it. I'm just asking the question here. Just reading verses. Right? Psalm 104. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle and vegetation for the service of man, that he may bring forth food from the earth, and wine that makes glad the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread which strengthens man's heart. Wait. Wine that makes glad the heart of man? It does, by the way. And somebody says, well, no, that's not alcohol wine. So wait, you mean just like Welch's grape juice? He's talking about Welch's grape juice right here. That's what you're telling me. Yep, Welch's grape juice. Welch's grape juice makes glad the heart of man. When I drink my Welch's grape juice here in a large table, time's pretty good. I ain't going home making a glass of it. It ain't making my heart glad. I'm going to tell you that right now. I like Diet Pepsi. It don't make my heart glad, right? I've been stuck on these new orange drinks, mandarin orange, whatever, sparkling water thing. It don't make my heart glad. I mean, I like it, but it don't make my heart glad. But I have had my heart glad sitting around with some margaritas before. And then you relax. Don't want to incriminate me or my wife, but some of the best conversations we had is when we relaxed. You're able to talk. You communicate. And I've told couples before are having various problems in their marriages and things. I said, the best thing you could do is go get a bottle of wine and go home with you and your spouse and watch some TV for a little while and enjoy your evening. And it'll change your marriage. Makes the heart glad. The Bible says so, right? Ecclesiastes 10:19. A feast is made for laughter, wine makes merry. Does it? Sure. Somebody say, yeah, we can make you mad. You're already mad. You're already an angry person. If you start drinking and you go that way, you already got some problems, right? That's my point. You already have issues that you need to work out. Generally speaking, the average person that has a couple margaritas, a couple drinks, if you ever go, I don't know if you've been in the cantina, but you ever go to Tempe, you pass by the cantina, you hear a lot of fussing and fighting in there, you hear a lot of laughing and joking in there. You hear a lot of laughing and joking. Why? Everybody's relaxed, having a good time. I think that's something to note. Zechariah 10:7. Those of Ephraim shall be like a mighty man, their heart shall rejoice as if with wine. Yes, their children shall see it and be glad, their heart shall rejoice in the Lord. As if with wine. So they're acknowledging that when people have wine, their hearts become glad. The Bible's acknowledging this. That happens. That's a part of life. And I'm telling you, go understand something about Mediterranean culture and society. You're 12 years old and you're being shoved wine in your face. You say, well, it wasn't fermented. Bruh, I don't know who made that up, and I've been researching and reading and studying everything I get my hands on about this. there wasn't a lot of people who did not want it to ferment. That wasn't a process that they were proud in which to engage. That's just what it was. And it was part of life. And when you were sitting around and you were having dinner, you were drinking. And it was drinking. And I will throw this in there in addition. From what I've read and studied about their culture and their history, that it wasn't a 4% Bud Light either. That you're talking about some serious stout stuff here that these people were indulging. And that was normal culture. And in fact, even today, in what I call my motherland, Ireland, European countries, there is, you're 10 years old, you could go into a lot of pubs and get a stout brew. It's just accepted as a part of their culture. It's just what they are. And it's what they do. In fact, Ireland is, a lot of businesses shut down at 2:00 in the evening in Ireland, and so everybody can go to the pub. That's just culture. That's just what they do there, right? So here we see that a little differently, but not so much where we live, actually, in deep South Louisiana, because drinking is culturally accepted here. That's what people do. But when we had some friends come down from another state for the shrimp festival. Minds blown that you could walk up somewhere and buy a drink and go walk down the street. They could not believe that you could do that. You take them to New Orleans, their minds are blown that you could go, they got curbside beers, right? And keep walking, their minds are blown. If you get caught with a glass bottle, that's $500 fine. And I always try to stop people when I see them, say, hey man, you might want to pour that in something, that's $500. And there's no questions asked, by the way. So you can't have glass in the streets of New Orleans. You can have plastic or cups, but no glass. But anyway, I always try to help the tourists out, and some listen and some are jerks and they're like, oh, I don't care. Well, good, you're gonna go to jail. Back to our verses. Proverbs 31. Give strong drink to him who is what? Perishing. Wine, literally that word right there in Hebrew is beer. To those who are bitter of heart, let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more. He's instructing people. Strong drink to him is perishing. Why? Because they're in pain, and it eases the pain. Wine for those who are bitter of heart, those who are upset, those who are, why? Because it cheers. Drink and forget his poverty, remember his misery no more. That's instructions now coming from the proverb writer on this particular subject. Song of Solomon. You probably never heard a verse from Song of Solomon before. Let him kiss me. Song of Solomon is basically a love story written to a woman. And when you read it, it'll make you blush because it talks about a lot of explicit stuff. But it says in the very beginning, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. But wine's a bad thing. So how is your love better than wine, but wine's a bad thing? Well, of course it's better than wine, because it's not a bad thing. They're portraying wine here in a favorable light and saying that your love is even better than that. Again, Song of Solomon. I said, I will go up to the palm tree. I will take hold of its branches. Let now your breasts be like clusters of the vine, the fragrance of your breath like apples, and the roof of your mouth like the best wine. The wine goes down smoothly for my beloved, moving gently the lips of sleepers. Again, you're having all of this portrayal as positive. Giving the illustration of your lover being like drinking that good wine. But he's not talking about alcohol. He's talking about Welch's grape juice right there. That's absurd. Exodus. This is the first time I almost did this, and I said, man, that's a lot. Don't do it, Raj. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I didn't do it. But then I was like, I'm going to go back and do it. So I went and got it, and I was like, no, I'm not. Because there's about 72 verses that this is the start of them. This is the first one. There's 72 verses. With the one lamb shall be 1/10 of an ephah. Talk about the sacrifices that they offer to God. A flour mixed with 1/4 of a pressed oil, 1/4 of wine as a drink offering. 72 verses from this point on are going to talk about the drink offering or the beer offering. And when you read it more explicitly and in more detail, that was offered up to God, and the priest was supposed to take some of it and take it home to his family and drink it. God wants it to be offered to him, but it's bad. Okay, this is wrong, don't do it. Which makes no sense at all. Moving to our New Testament, you got to get some consideration of this. This verse stuck out in my mind for a long time. I wrestled with it. There's only one logical explanation. Jesus is talking about how people are criticizing him. And he says, John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and y'all say he had a demon. Because everybody's eating bread, drinking wine. And John's like, nope, I'm dedicated to God only. What did he eat? Locusts and wild honey. That's all he ate, right? He says, but I come, Jesus, eating and drinking. Drinking what, Jesus? What were you drinking, Jesus? Pepsi. Welch's grape juice? No. I come eating and drinking, and you say, here's a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Why would they call Jesus a drunkard if he wasn't drinking? Something that would be intoxicating. Why? Jesus could just turn around and say, that's water. I'm only drinking water. If he was only drinking water, if he was only drinking unfermented wine, if he was only drinking Welch's grape juice or Pepsi Cola, then they would have no case to say that at all. But they said it because he's indulging. He's eating and he's drinking and he's enjoying life. God put us here to enjoy life. Why would Jesus not enjoy life? I always get the impression that Jesus didn't enjoy life from preachers. That he was miserable and that he just walked around shaking his head all day. And none of that is true. Of course Jesus enjoyed life and encouraged us to do the same. But they wouldn't say that unless they had a basis to say it. Now, was it true that Jesus was no, but they had a basis to make the point because of the behavior in which he engaged. All right, now here we go. We're going to start getting into it now. So did Jesus make water into wine or not? I heard a great sermon by Kate Summers one time. He was one of my classmates. And he preached a sermon from this, and he said Jesus did not make water into wine. And he said it was grape juice. And I listened to that sermon, I thought, man, that's a good sermon. And so what I did is I would just regurgitate what I heard Kate say, because I thought it was so good. And then I studied it. And I really studied it. And guys, I know somebody will write me or call me and say I'm stupid, idiot. I'm telling you. I studied it. And I can't draw any other conclusion but that Jesus made wine. And that people were drunk on this occasion. So it says that there was a third day. If you're counting in the book of John, this is after Jesus began to reveal himself as who he was. So it's the third day. And there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. And the mother of Jesus was there, Mary, so she was a guest. And so Jesus and his followers would have been there. Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. So they're out. In Mediterranean culture, that's an embarrassment. So I'm getting the impression that Mary was close to these people. So this is probably family. And you feel bad for your family, right? You ever somewhere with your family, you're at your sister's wedding, and your sister kind of said, we're running out of food. And you look, and it's like, oh, wow, we still got a line of people. That's an embarrassment, right? In their culture, even more so. Everything in Mediterranean culture is about hospitality. It's about treating your guests well. And if you ain't treating your guests well, you got nothing going for you. Your status in society plummets. It meant something to them. It was honorable for them to invite their guests and to treat their guests well. My dad used to invite people over and cook so much food, boil so much crawfish or whatever it may be. I mean, we would just have so many leftovers. And my mom would tell him every time, I don't know why you cook so much. And he would say, because I ain't running out. I will not run out. He said, everybody's going to eat, and they're going to eat all they want. And if we got a lot left, we got a lot left. He said, but we ain't going to run out. And that was my family. He was raised that way. You got enough for everybody. My grandparents used to say, y'all eat all you want, and if you eat it all, then we're going to make some more. That's what we're going to do. And so this is a big deal that they ran out of wine. They didn't expect the heavy drinkers to show up, but they did. So Mary tells Jesus, we're out of wine. In meaning, she expected Jesus to do something about this. Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour's not yet come. What? This is basically what Jesus is saying. After my study and research, Jesus is saying, why are you putting me in the middle of this? Why are you involving me in this? I don't want to be involved in this. But yet, he's now involved in this. My time's not yet come, meaning, man, when I do this, people are really going to know who I am here. They're going to start catching on, and I'm not ready for people to know that yet. But we got a situation. Isn't it funny how God will often conform to the situation? Was that God's will? Apparently not. But what does Jesus do? He conforms to the situation. Don't we do that in life? Don't we conform to our situation? We got rules in our house, but sometimes we got to manipulate those rules because the situation calls for it. You know, we got certain things we do and don't do. I don't want my son's girlfriend to be at the house past 8. The other day she was there till 9. She got there late. She don't get to come over often. She can stay till 9. Fine. You conform. You take the circumstances into consideration. And so that's what happens here. So after he tells her that, his mother says to the servants, whatever he tells you to do, do it. So she knows he's going to fix it. Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone according to the manner of purification of the Jews. They had to wash themselves and all this other stuff. And they had 20 or 30 gallons of water in each one. Which was it, 20 or 30? I don't know, 20 or 30. Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water. They filled them up to the brim, right? So you got at least 30 gallons in each one. And he said to them, draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast. So what you do is you kind of had your honored guests of honor. And even though it's a wedding feast, you would still have that guy who was like your guest of honor. And maybe it's the groom's dad or the bride's dad. Typically, that would be who it is. But this is the guy kind of giving the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And that makes no sense to us, right? My daughter's about to have a wedding. We're in the deep planning stages of this. It's about to happen. And we ain't going to have no master feast guy there. We won't have one. And because I don't relate to this. I don't know what's going on here, right? But that's what they did. And so they take it to him. And they draw out means they fixed him a cup. Right? They didn't like draw the scoop and carry the scoop to him. They made him a glass and they bring it to him. And it says that when he tasted the water that was made into wine. And so it's the first time it's revealed to us that when they drew it out, it wasn't water anymore. When he tasted it, and he did not know where it came from. But the servants who drew the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom. He said, get the groom over here. I got to talk to this dude. So the groom shows up and he said, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine. And when the guests have well drunk, then he brings out the inferior wine. It's kind of like you start off with Jack Daniels and then you're switching on over to Evan Williams. Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, right? You start off with the Jose Cuervo and then we went to the store brand tequila, right? You start off with Budweiser, now we're bringing out the Natural Light. Right? Because everybody's feeling good now, they don't care. Right? I know a lot of people, they get gone, they don't care. You know, well, we out of the good stuff, it don't matter what you got. It's just, right? And he says, but you have kept the good wine until now. Important to note here. That word well drunk is one word in Greek, and it's the word methuo. And it literally means to be drunk, to be intoxicated. I don't care what lexicon you're looking at. I don't care what Greek dictionary you're using. That's what the word means. I looked it up in all of them. It means to be drunk, to be intoxicated. So he's telling them, usually, when everybody's methuo, y'all bring out the cheap stuff. But this time, y'all brought out the good stuff last. That's literally what he's saying. That we're all having a good time now. We're buzzed up. And yet now you bring out the good stuff. Nobody does that. But it shows that when Jesus does something and God does it, he did it the best. Right? And it says that this was the beginning of the signs that Jesus did in Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So this is the first one, first miracle Jesus ever did. And isn't it funny that the first miracle Jesus did was turn water into alcohol? And guys, you can read that. I read through this in the Greek. I studied this intensely. There's no other way to understand this than that Jesus made oinos. Somebody says, well, there's glucose and oinos. Two different Greek words. Oinos means regular wine like grape juice, and glucose. That is not true. I don't know any Greek scholar that confirms that. Every Greek scholar says glucose and oinos. Glucose typically means more of what we would call a beer or stout beer. Their beer wasn't like our beer. It would be more similar to what you do have overseas. It would be hot. It would be real thick, real dark. That's typically your word glucose. And oinos is typically your word for wine. Just your red wine, which is what they would have been drinking at that particular time. And there's just no doubt about it. Now, some objections, and this verse is often brought up as an objection. Woe to him who gives drink to his neighbors. Oh, see? How could Jesus have made water into wine if the Bible says, woe to him who gives drink to his neighbor? And then I would say, well, maybe he's talking about grape juice right there. But that's not, he's talking about drink, pouring it from the wineskin till they are drunk. Oh, see, you can't, no. That's not what he's condemning here. So that he can gaze on their naked bodies. You kind of got the roofie idea going on here, where he's condemning, not saying, hey, man, you want a cold one. He's condemning, let me see if I could get her drunk, take advantage of her. That's what he's condemning. Let me see if I could get them loosed up here, take advantage of them. Let me see if I could get them out of their element. Isn't that what a lot of people do? They'll slip something in somebody's drink. Make it a point. If you go to some of these places, don't leave your drink sitting there when you walk away, unless you're sitting with people you know and you trust. Don't do it. You get up, if you're at a party or somewhere, people you don't know, and you get up, you bring that with you. And if you leave it there when you come back, I would not advise you to continue to drink it. You don't know. People are trying to slip stuff and stuff all the time for various reasons. That's how a lot of women get brought into sex trafficking. People put something in their drink. They're not thinking right. They're blacking out. They leave with them. They start injecting them with dope. They miss it. Nobody knows what happened to them. A lot of women come up missing from bars and places like that. Nobody ever knows what happens to them. I know what happened to them. This kind of stuff happened to them. So he's not condemning. And Deborah was actually one of the first people to point this out to me, because we would use this verse. And she said, I don't think that's what that verse says. I don't think he's condemning the giving of the drink. He's condemning the purpose of which they gave the drink. And she's exactly right. That's what's being condemned here. All right, now what about this verse? Do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Well, see, don't do it. Remember what I said earlier, everything got a context, and everything fits into its place. In Ephesus, they celebrated the god Bacchus. Bacchus was the wine god. And so what they would do, I don't know if you've ever been or seen pictures. If you don't go. Don't even look up the pictures. But there's something called Decadence Weekend in New Orleans. And basically anything goes. If you get down to French Quarter during that time, you're going to figure out very quickly that you're probably somewhere you don't want to be. Jenny and I went out there one weekend. We were like, hey, let's go. And nothing else going on today. Let's just load up and hit New Orleans for the day. And you get there, you're driving down the street, and you figure out very quickly that we're probably just going to turn around and drive straight back home. It's like the deeper you're getting closer to the quarter, it's like, yep, definitely making a U-turn here. Well, basically, nobody's wearing clothes. Drugs, it's insane. No cops aren't arresting anybody. Everybody's doing whatever they want to do. And I bring that up to say that in Ephesus, when they would celebrate the feast of Bacchus, that's what they would do. It was a big orgy in the streets. Now, see how important that is to the context, the culture, the history is important to the context of this. Watch what some scholars say. And by the way, that is the word, methuo, right there. Here's what Albert Barnes says. In this verse, there's an allusion to the orgies of Bacchus. That's what he's talking about. Or to the festival celebrated in honor of that pagan god. He was the god of wine. And during those festivals, men and women regarded it as an acceptable act of worship to become intoxicated and with wild songs and cries run through the streets and fields and vineyards. And doing what? Their orgies, right? To these things, the apostle opposes psalms, hymns, spiritual songs as much more appropriate modes of devotion and would have the Christian worship stand out in strong contrast with the wild and dissolute habits of the pagan. See, when you put it in a context, so what Paul is telling them is don't go celebrate Bacchus. Instead, here's how Christians worship. Psalms, hymns, spiritual songs. Adam Clark says, this is a farther allusion to the Bacchalian mysteries. In them, his votaries got drunk and ran into all manner of excess. Plato, though he forbade drunkenness in general, allowed that the people should get drunk in these solemnities of that god who invented wine. And indeed, this was their common custom. When they had offered their sacrifices, they indulged themselves in drunkenness and ran into all kinds of extravagant orgies. So basically, what Paul is doing is he's not saying, and especially after all the verses we have that have just portrayed in a positive light, he's not saying, no, guys, don't do it. He's saying, guys, don't do this. In contrast of doing this, let's worship God in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing, making melody in your heart to the Lord. Let's do that. Let's not do this. This will get you in trouble. This won't, right? And so everything is got to be contextualized and put in its proper place. I want to give you a few considerations as we get ready to close. I want you to think about this. I just thought of this. The Bible says that deacons are not to be given to much wine, but elders are not to be given to wine at all. So here's what I've been told about that. A deacon's too dumb to know if he's getting drunk or not. So he can only drink a little bit just in case he ends up. That's absurd. I ain't never in my life drank something with alcohol in it and went, I don't know if that has alcohol or not. I don't know. That's never happened to me. You drink something with alcohol and you go, woo! I got alcohol in it right there, right? I've never made that mistake. I've gone, man, I've been drinking these Red's apples all day. I thought it was just an apple drink, but I'm starting to feel something here. I've never made that mistake, right? And you haven't either. I never drank a Pepsi and went, I don't know. Somebody put some, I don't know. Come on, man. A deacon, a person who becomes qualified to be a deacon in the church is that dumb? Well, they can't figure it out. That's the explanation we've been given for that. No. He's telling them that the higher their status becomes in the church, the more careful they need to be in life. That's a good rule, man. The higher your status becomes, the more careful you need to be in life with what you do. That's all he's pointing out with those verses. A few considerations. What's your intent? Should you drink, should you not drink? Look, I don't know. That's your decision. Do I think you're sinning? Nope. If you get drunk, do I think you sin? No. I think you need to be careful. Man, best place to do that, and you'll probably have the best time of your life, is at your house with your spouse. I promise you. You'll have a very great time. Put some music on or whatever you like to do. I think that's the safest environment too. Man, you want to go to Tampico's and have yourself some margaritas and say, have at it, by the way. Know if you could drive. Most people know. We're trying to be responsible people. You know when you can drive, you can't drive. Be a responsible human being. Be careful. But I want to say, what's your intent? What are you trying to do here? What are you trying to do? you're trying to relax, you're trying to enjoy life. Maybe you're actually an introvert like I am. And these kind of things help break you out of your shell. These things make you feel more like yourself, more open, more talkative, more social. That's it's what it takes for some people. But ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish here? Look, if you're one of those people, I know some people. I'm gonna rage this weekend. I'm gonna get stupid drunk, and I'm going, wow, that's like, all right, have fun, I guess. Come on, man. Be civilized, be an adult, but ask yourself, what's your intent? Influence. I want to talk about this for a minute because we have a skewed view of this. So, I know a preacher who had a member of the congregation, and a doctor puts him on this medication he can't afford. It's to help him sleep, thin his blood, all this other stuff. And so he tells the doctor, he's living off of samples, basically. And finally the doctor's like, man, you got any samples? You're going to have to go fill the script. He says, Doc, I just can't afford it. Doc said, I tell you what, drink you about 4 beers every night. They'll do the same thing. So he goes talk to the preacher. He said, the doctor told me to go get some beer. He said, drink about 4 of them every night. And so the preacher said, well, go get them. You can't afford your medication, go get them. And he said, well, where am I going to go buy them? I got to go in the store. People's going to see me. Bro, people don't know who you are like you think people know who you are, number one. If people don't know you, you think people know. They're watching me do this. People pass you in the store like, oh, man, got them 12-pack, good for them. And they don't know who you are. That's number one. Number two, the only reason people hold those kind of things against you is if you've been making a fuss about it yourself. See, if you're going around condemning everybody for doing it, now when they see you, they're going to go, hey, 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 hey. Otherwise, they're not going to acknowledge it at all. They don't care. Have you ever seen the Catholic priests at the festival when they used to have that little fair in Patterson? I remember we were out there one day and this dude is drinking beer, smoking a cigarette, and me and my buddies, we're like 13, we're going, it's the priest. People don't care is the way you think they do, number one. And number two, your influence, influence of what? Hey man, Roger, you got a 12-pack there? Yeah. What you gonna do with that? I'm gonna drink them. All of them? Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Where are you going? Go in the house. Go in the house. Really? You don't think anything? Do you think something's wrong with it? Well, I don't think anything's wrong with it. Well, I don't think anything's wrong. Most people don't think anything's wrong with it. We created this problem. We created this mantra, this issue with these things. People around us don't see it that way. We think they do, but they don't. And the only reason people make an issue out of it is when you make an issue out of it. Somebody says, well, what do you do if you were before making an issue out of it, and now you do want to go get a 6-pack or whatever, or a bottle of wine? And what do you say to people? You know what I've learned to say to people? And I've had to do this a lot. Man, I changed the way I think about that. And I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable with it in the past. I've grown. I've changed the way I think about it. You know what most people would go? Yeah, I got you. Simple as that. Culture is so important right here. We have a culture in the church where if you don't wear a suit, you're not a good Christian. A preacher with tattoos, who ever heard of such thing? And I admit, I've had times in my life where I went, man, I wish I could erase these things. Bottom line is, guys, I like them. I like getting them. I like the way they look. They're addictive. They really are. Apparently your brain releases endorphins. But what I also found out in today's culture is people don't care. I got offered a job. We're trying to come to terms on money right now. But I accepted a position at Swift Shifts for a management position. And we're not coming to terms on money. But I'm going to accept whatever their final offer is, which I thought they would give me Friday. It'll probably be tomorrow now. So I had to go interview. And I was like, man, and like my clothes aren't looking right, and that's a management position, so you don't want to go in looking like a slob. And so I'm like, man, so I called Jenny. I was like, should I just wear a polo? Because the shirt ain't fitting right. And I was like, but I want to cover up as much of my tattoos as I can. But then on my hands and everything, so you can only cover so much. So I go in, and the guy who is going to be my boss and the HR person come in to interview me, and she got as many tattoos as I do. And I thought, well, there goes that. I'm not worried about that anymore. They don't care. They want to know what you can do. What's your ability? You know what? Culture changes. And the way people view things changes with culture. And certain things become more acceptable because we begin to realize that you're not a devil if you have tattoos. Like at one point we thought you were, right? You're not a devil if you have a few drinks. At one point we thought you were a prostitute if you showed your ankles. And now, man, I don't know you go anywhere without seeing a woman's, not only ankles, their feet. I mean, women wear sandals all the time, open-toe shoes. And man, that just used to be a no-no. Culture is so important. Understanding Jewish culture, Mideastern, Mediterranean culture is so important. Those things were common and acceptable for those people. And last thing, you need control. Can you control yourself? If you cannot control yourself, stay away from the stuff. Then is it a sin for you? Yes, it is. If you can't control yourself, if you do get belligerent, if you don't know how to behave and act, then yes, you got a problem, stay away. Don't mess with it. Just like a credit card. If you can't stop swiping that card, you might need to cut the card up. Okay? Same thing. If you can't enjoy McDonald's once a week, some of y'all every day, then maybe with your health, you need to reconsider some things. But ask yourself, can I control myself? Do I know when to say when? Most people do. I do. I'm a person who knows when to say when. I know when to say, all right, guys, is it done? I'm a person who's always known when to say, yeah, babe. If you don't, then don't. Then don't mess with the stuff. But if you do, you can be responsible, then go for it. And finally, I would say the church just needs to stop focusing on the wrong things, man. We pay so much attention to so many things that don't matter. So many things that God hasn't given that attention to, that we give attention to. So many things that we've prioritized in certain ways that God doesn't even talk about sometimes. We really need to learn to fixate ourselves on the important things. If a guy goes, man, we saw Dean the other night at Tampico, man, he had a margarita. And like all of a sudden now Dean's a sinner. He's a terrible. No, I don't care. What does Dean bring to the church in his service to God? That does not affect his service to God. Not at all. And I had mentioned to someone the other day, we had a friend in Texas, and he was a deacon, actually. And boy, I like Bud Light a lot. And we would go to his house, and he would have an ice chest. And I'm telling you, I'm not making this up. My wife can verify. The more he would drink them Bud Lights, the more insightful he would be in the talking about God and the church. And he said it one time. He said, man, I don't know why. I just feel more spiritual. And I don't know if it relaxed him or what it did, but he would sit there and he would want to talk about the Lord's work and what the church could do better and how we could reach more people. And I used to just sit there with my mind blown. And he would call like 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night because he'd been drinking them Bud Lights. And he's like, man, here's what I was thinking we could do. I got this idea. And it would be great ideas. And I'd be like, dude, are you writing that down? Well, no, that's what I'm calling telling you. So, all right, man. And, but I'm not making it up. I'm serious. And it's saying, I don't know how many he would drink, maybe 8 or 9, I don't know, 6, 9. But it seemed like the more of them that he would have, the more insightful the guy would get. And we just got to be careful how we criticize these things and the approach we take to these things. So consider, I wrote this down in my closing, consider consequences too to your behavior. I'm sort of a libertarian guy. I believe people should do whatever they want to do. But you have to accept the responsibility and the consequences for what you do. All right? If you want to go out and act a fool, you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. I try to tell young women all the time, if you want to be promiscuous, accept the consequences that when you fall in love with a man one day, he might not like that you have been around that much. Accept that. If you can accept that, then do what you want to do. But there will be consequences to your behavior. Consider that and make sure you're willing to accept whatever those consequences may be. Know what you can do and what you can't do. You may be a person that can go and drink a glass of wine or two or three or maybe the bottle, and you're just happy, and you might have some whiskey and you might be mean. It affects people for some reason. Know that and say, okay, hey, stay away from this. I'm okay with this, and be responsible with that. And just consider, just because it's okay, and I believe it's okay, and I believe the Bible teaches it's okay, doesn't necessarily mean you should. Think about that too. Just because God doesn't condemn it, doesn't mean you should do it. Just think about that. That's a deep thought there. Because there's a lot of things that the Bible doesn't condemn that old Raj doesn't need to do. So know yourself, give thought to yourself and what you're doing, and be responsible. And that's all I got to say about that.